Now, here's the amazing part about the Bible. The story of the Bible, really, most of the story of the Bible, is of that kind of disharmony, that kind of division, that kind of conflict and hurt and frustration, that kind of pushing and shoving, that kind of anger and envy, all just kind of flowing over and over and over and over again, like an open sewer. And yet the promise of the Bible is God saying, I'm going to fix this. The promise of the Bible is God saying, I am going to make out of people that hate each other, that are divided, that are in conflict, I am going to make a family. I am going to bring people together. Of God giving us more kindness and more mercy and more grace. That we need that goodness and that He offers us that goodness. It's not an extra in my life. It's not what would be a nice thing that God would put, the cherry on top of my already wonderful life that I have earned for myself, that I'm perfectly fine on my own. No, the truth is that my life is a mess and there is a necessary good that God needs to do in my life. And the whole story of the Bible is God saying, I will do the necessary good in your life. But what is so interesting, and maybe some people hate it, but maybe some people love it, there's this real mystery. That God says He wants to make a family. He wants to bring people together. But that He is not going to force you into His family. He's not going to threaten you into His family. You have to choose to become a part of His family. But for anyone, regardless of just how messed up your home was, regardless of how messed up your life has been, regardless of how much of that list you could say, did it today, did it 5 minutes ago, did it 30 seconds ago, whatever it is, that kind of envy and the rivalry and the division, all of it. There's nothing on that list that you could confess to that would then have God say, no, I'm sorry, you're not included anymore. That all of us need that connection, that kindness, that love, and that God offers it. In fact, in the Old Testament, there is this one word. It's called hesed. And it is so central to everything that God is doing that people have a hard time even kind of pinning it down with one word translation. So we end up doing is kind of throwing words at this to try to explain it. Sometimes it is steadfast love. Sometimes it is covenant mercy. Often it is translated as loving kindness. That God offers you His loving kindness. That you need His loving kindness. And when you receive His loving kindness, what's so amazing is that you are actually brought into the family. The Bible says that when we are adopted by God, we receive lots of things that happen when you're adopted. So Jesus says that He's preparing a place for us, that you get a new room in the house when you're adopted. God puts His name on you. You get the family name when you're adopted. The Bible talks about God's people wearing new clothing, being dressed in white. There's this image in Revelation of all of God's people. You get new clothes in the wardrobe when you are adopted into the family. But even more than all that, the Bible says that God actually puts His Spirit on all of us because we have lived so alienated and so much as orphans that we need a constant voice telling us that we are God's children. Paul says that the Spirit that you received, it does not make you slaves so that you live in fear, so that you think you're on your own. You've got to figure it out. No, it's not like that in God's household. Instead, the Spirit you received, it brought about your adoption. You are one of God's kids. And now you have the right to speak to the God of the universe and say, Dad, Father. You are a part of his family. When God looks at you, he looks at you as his kindred. He looks at you with all the kindness, all the care, all the provision that you will ever need. And then, in this amazing, wonderful way, he also says, and I want you now to live in that family. Now, let's be honest. We can all, if you have a sibling, if you are an only child and you've been around a family at any point in your life, you've seen siblings and fighting and disagreement and division. If you are a parent, there is 40, 70, 95% of your mental energy that goes to saying, I wish these kids would just stop fighting. The way that things should be and the way that things are feel divided. But what God says is that we're not the kind of family that maybe you experience. We're empowered to be a different kind of family. A different kind of family where brothers and sisters care for each other and love each other. That kindness it's the way of acting in the world, in the wider context, in the way that parents want, not see necessarily, but want their children to act at home. That's what kindness is. It's this lived out care. That way that you know that you should have acted with your sibling, that's what kindness is. That tenderness, that thoughtfulness, those actions that you know you should do, that's what kindness is. That's what God calls us to. And it's not that we're just on our own to figure out how to do it. And he says, once you do it, then I'll adopt you. He says, you're adopted. You're empowered. And God cares for us and provides for us. There is nothing good that he calls us to that he doesn't start by first giving to you. And so he gives us this kindness, and then he invites us to share that same kindness.